the celery and the carrots. And like I said, you can add more carrots if you want to. I would, if I was making this at home, and I would probably add a bit more, but that's just because I like carrots. So I've got just some fresh parsley here. You can use pretty much any type of parsley you like, or none if you don't like it. So I'm just gonna grab a couple of those. I like using fresh parsley, and I'll usually coarsely chop it so you can kind of taste it throughout. So the one thing I had to make sure I included tomatoes in this recipe because I'm from Southwestern Ontario and tomatoes are my bread and butter, so to speak. There's so many tomato farmers. We only did cash crops, so we didn't actually have tomatoes, but it's a competitive industry. It's quite amazing what they can do too. So all the tomatoes, like the ones I've had here, that's everything that comes from the farms right around my small town, hometown area. And now they're even getting into growing them in greenhouses more and more. They're growing them, a lot of them, at least in Ontario where I'm from, they'll grow them in what's called hydroponic, meaning that there's no soil, they just grow the plants from water. It's really quite incredible. So I'm just gonna add a couple of bay leaves. I will remove these before we eat. One time, my husband decided to be a little bit spontaneous and make his own soup, and he left the bay leaves in there, and I definitely ate one. But I didn't like choke and die, so that's pretty good. Yeah, gotta love them. He didn't tell me afterwards, and he's like, I can't find the other bay leaf. Did I eat it? Yeah, it was just a piece of it, thank goodness. So I'm just gonna pull off the rest of that parsley. I actually grow my own basil, and I keep a few pots on the windowsill in my kitchen. I use a lot of fresh basil, so it's much smarter for myself to have it grown continuously. I don't do hydroponic. I don't have one of those hydroponic herb garden kit things or anything like that. I just grow it in my soil, give it a little water, trim it down every now and then. I really like the taste of fresh basil, especially when I pair it with meat. Almost like, especially red meat, I should say. It's just like when you cook your steaks and you add a little bit of rosemary. Anybody ever do that before? Highly recommend it. Very tasty. I did that a lot this summer with my fresh rosemary. So I'm just gonna sprinkle that in. And again, I cut that quite coarse. I like to add that extra flavor coming out of the basil. But if you want something a little bit less intense, so to speak, by all means, use a dried basil, cut it finer, anything like that. Next, I'm just gonna add in some garlic. Got any garlic lovers in the crowd? Oh yeah, garlic is very good for your heart, so I love cooking with garlic. So I'm just gonna dice it up pretty fine. As a kid, I used to hate garlic. My dad would always say, it's good for you, Kate, it's good for you. Have you ever had pickled garlic? Oh yeah, I've got some of that at home. Tomorrow I'll be bringing my own. I make pickles at home. I do it with a few friends. And we did a whole jar of just pickled garlic. You can't even taste the garlic, and you're just getting all the nutrients. You're like, maybe a little sodium and vinegar, but you know, you're still getting the benefits of the garlic. So just gonna cut this up. And I'm gonna leave this garlic a little bit coarse because we do have some garlic lovers in here. Let's see how you like it a little bit coarser. I am not a professional chopper by any means, so bear with me. It's funny, for some reason, I'm always the one that's mostly doing the cooking because I like it. And my husband will see me cutting with a knife, get your fingers away from there. I've never once had to go to the emergency room nor cut myself, so I don't know what his deal is. All right, give that a nice stir. So we've got a nice variety of color going on in here. The last thing I'm gonna add, I'm gonna add some green beans. I just buy it frozen because it's really easy, and this time of year it's a little bit difficult to find green beans, and it's nice to support something that you know is gonna be more local anyway. So like I said, I don't like to use measuring cups, so I just spoon it in. If I had it my way, I'd probably dump the whole thing in here, because I love green beans, but we'll keep it a little bit. I'm like that way with noodles too. When I was growing up, Mom would always ask us to put noodles in the soup when we got home from school, and I have a twin sister, so my sister and I were like, okay, she said 1 scoop each, so that means 2 scoops each, right? That's 4, instead of just the 1 scoop between the two of us we were supposed to do. All right, let's just get rid of some of this out of our way. Last, so I just added in the green beans, and like I said, you can add more or less. It's almost starting to look like a vegetable soup, but that meat is still simmering on the bottom there. You can see it coming up now. This just makes it a little bit more nutritious, right? We all love beef barley soup, but why not add a bit of vegetables too? So we don't necessarily have to add all of this barley in here. Like I said, I did pre-cook it. It's still nice and warm, and that's just to cut down the time. The other way you could make this is by throwing it all in the crock pot, turning it on low, and heading off to work. It's another really good way to get it to be ready when you get home. If you have dogs, I feel sorry for them that have to smell it all day. I hope you keep them in a kennel so they don't break into your crock pot. There. So I like to add lots of barley, like I said, with pasta. I love it. Barley is one of my favorite grains. It adds such a nice texture to our soups. I'm a big fan. Well, let's just dump this all in, why not? All right. So you can see it all going in there. I made it with beef broth, like I mentioned earlier, and that was just so it had extra flavor, because sometimes it can be a bit bland. So it's looking more like barley with a side of beef. The really good thing about barley is that it's one of the main things that's used in livestock feed. So obviously we love eating beef, and beef is good for us. So if they're eating barley, barley's good for us, right? We're gonna ration that way. It's actually quite valuable to be used as a feed. So we're just gonna let that simmer a little bit. I've got it on high so it'll start to simmer a little bit more. It's just starting to get some smoke going. I'm gonna clear off a little bit of this stuff. Clean it up a little bit. That's my husband's biggest pet peeve, is I don't clean up after myself. But you have to make a mess to make something delicious, right? That's what I think. I hope you back me up. He's coming tomorrow, so maybe I should ask you that again tomorrow. The one really good thing about barley is that Health Canada's confirmed that it can, if you consume barley, it can help reduce your levels of cholesterol. So if anybody has any cholesterol issues, it can definitely help to reduce your cholesterol levels, and cholesterol can be a risk factor for heart disease. Barley is also really high in fiber. It's one of the best grains for you, basically. It's actually the 3rd largest crop grown in Canada. Yeah, everyone's like, but I guess that makes sense, right? You need barley to make beer. You also need it to feed livestock, so I think it's a pretty hot commodity, so to speak. Food, feed, and beer. It's what it's best for. Throwing out some stuff. So we'll let that keep cooking a little bit. I will kind of put stuff aside. There we go. You don't have to use bay leaves. Like I said, you want to play around with your recipe as much as you can to make it your own. So I added a couple bay leaves. Sometimes I'll add 4. Get a little into it. Oh yeah, that's looking good. We're just gonna bring that to a bit of a more of a boiling point. Set this down for a second. I don't usually add all of my broth right away, so this is a bit of a thicker soup. You'll see there's not as much broth compared to the vegetables and stuff, but they're gonna let off their juices too, and that's gonna make a nice combination as well. Usually what I'll do is at the end of my recipe, if whatever's left over, I'll go to put it away and I'll add more broth in then. That way because everything will start soaking it up. Even though you want to exasperate that barley a little bit, it's still gonna keep soaking up some of the juices. So it's just a little secret I do. All right, that's starting to get a nice little steam going. So we'll keep that going there. It's on full. So yeah, the thing with a big pot like this is it can take a little bit more time, but you're gonna have lots of leftovers. I'm bringing this to work tomorrow. I already promised them. They found out that I do cooking demos on the side, and it kind of spread like wildfire. I'm also back tomorrow at 4:30. I'm making bison sliders. If anyone likes bison or has never tried it, I'd definitely encourage you to come out. I'll also be making a side salad with, because you have to have some vegetables and nutrients, right? Bison's good for you too, though. So we'll be making homemade salad dressing. with honey mustard salad dressing to pair really nicely with our bison sliders. So I'll be here at 4:30 tomorrow. Oh, they're looking for 50-50 tickets if you're interested. Okay, let's give that one more stir. It's almost getting to that boiling point. If we weren't tight on time, I would definitely be letting this boil a little bit longer. But we are a bit tight on time. Those vegetables are starting to soften up quite a bit. The carrots are nice and they're still a little bit more crisp or crunchy. And you can start to see that beef coming up now. So you can see like the little beef chunks that I cut, they're looking actually quite nice now. They're a nice size nibble. And that's really all it takes. The more time you have to just let it simmer on your stovetop or cook in your crock pot, just that more flavor you're going to come out from the beef and all of the vegetables that are in here. You could even add mushrooms. On my recipe, I said to add mushrooms. I wasn't feeling mushrooms today. So I added green beans, and that was just to help absorb the iron that's in the beef. Does anybody have any questions? I know I talk really fast. I'm trying to work on that one.
How much did you cover with the?
What's that?
How high did you cover the barley when you cooked it at home?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I cook the barley, I usually cover it about 2 centimeters, give or take. I figure whatever's left, I left it a little bit al dente so it would keep cooking in here, and then I poured some of the broth into it so it continued to cook as I came to Agribition. So I would say like 2 centimeters, and then just gauge it, kind of giving it a little stir. I just find that cooking this and then cooking, if you had the barley cooking beside it, in the broth, you're going to get that flavor of the beef from the broth, and then putting in here, it just streamlines your process, so you're going to have soup that much faster. In my house,